Hello, welcome to Algebra 1, Lesson 10 with Miss Barrett. In this lesson, our objective is to continue practicing solving quadratics by factoring. This is day 2. Okay, in this lesson, we're going to go step by step on the different levels of solving quadratics by factoring. Okay. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at when you're given a graph of a quadratic. Here I have two graphs of quadratic functions, and I say find the solutions, which means I want to know what the x-intercepts are. Other words for x-intercepts are roots and zeros. We're going to use the word zeros in this lesson. So I want to know what are the zeros of a quadratic function when I'm given a graph. Remember, the zeros are wherever the x-intercepts are, where the graph, the parabola, crosses the x-axis. So if you look here at this first graph, y equals a negative x squared plus 4x, we see that the zeros or the x-intercepts are the points 0, 0, and the point 4, 0. So we would basically say the zeros are 0 and 4. For this second graph, we see that the zeros are here, the x-intercepts. Be mindful that x-intercepts is the same thing as saying the zeros. Okay. So my x-intercepts here are the points negative 2, 0 and 3, 0. So we can say the zeros are negative 2 and 3. That's level 1. Those are the easier ones. If you're given a graph, just decide, look closely, figure out where the x-intercepts are, and write them out. Now, level 2, imagine if you have already factored a quadratic. So these would be the factors. So using the factors of a quadratic, so the first one has factors x plus 5 and x minus 6 equals 0. This is a quadratic that's already been factored. Therefore, these are the factors. Now, what I need to do is the same thing we did in the last 2 steps we did in the lesson 9 practice, where we make both of the factors equal to 0. So x plus 5 equals 0, and x minus 6 equals 0. So once you factored, you make both of the factors equal to 0. Solve for x. I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides to get x by itself. X equals negative 5. For the second factor, I'm going to have x minus 6 equals 0. I'm going to add 6 on both sides. That's going to give me x equals positive 6. Okay. If you notice from the graphs, there's usually always 2 zeros for quadratic functions. Okay. That means the zeros here are negative 5, 0, and 6, 0. You can say it's negative 5 and 6. Okay. Again, if we're considering that this quadratic has already been factored, I have factors of 2x plus 3 and x minus 1 equals 0. I'm going to set both of those factors equal to 0 separately. And I'm going to solve for x. So if I have 2x plus 3 equals 0, I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. That gives me 2x equals negative 3, and then I'm going to divide by 2. Therefore, x equals negative 3 over 2. Do not be afraid of fractions. You will get fractions sometimes. You may also get the answer of 0, and that's fine as well. For x minus 1 equals 0, I'm going to do I'm going to add 1 on both sides. which gives me x equals 1. So my points are going to be -3/2, 0, and 1, 0. So my zeros are basically -3/2 and 1. Now let's get into the tricky stuff. If I have level 3, determine the solutions. So here I have a quadratic equation where it says x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Here you can see that the a term is equal to 1. Okay, so I'm going to use that method where the a term is equal to 1. All I have to do is find the factors of c that add to make b. So factors of c that add to b. Whenever your a term is already 1, you can just find the factors of c that add to make b. Let's do it. So c is 6. The factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3, or -1, -6, -2, and -3. Remember, if it's a positive, it can be 2 positives or 2 negatives. So which factors add to make 5? That would be 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 plus 3 is 5. Now I'm going to write those out as factors. So x plus 2, x plus 3 equals 0. Don't forget your equals 0. So if we were just factoring, this would be the end, but we are finding solutions. So we must make both of them equal to 0 separately, like we did in level 2. And then solve for x. So when I do that, I get x equals -2 and x equals -3. So my zeros are -2 and -3. If you write them like like points, that's just fine. It's all the same. Okay, that's level 3, when the a term is already 1. Let's look at level 4. With level 4, the same question is determine the solutions. Well, we see for level 4, the a term is not 1. The a term is not 1. So we have to first see, can we take out a GCF? And if you look, we can. So this is going to be the GCF method. Okay? Remember, the GCF method can be used for any of the methods, because if you can take out a GCF, you need to do that. So the GCF for 5x squared minus 45x plus 10 plus 100, for time's sake, you can always just do your factoring trees, okay? But what we'll find is that the GCF is 5. So you're going to put 5 outside the parentheses, and you're going to divide everything by 5 each term. And that's going to give you x squared minus 9x plus 20. Now, if you look, equals 0. Now, if you look here, this quadratic inside the parentheses has a term that equals 1. Now I'm going to use that same steps that I used in this level 3 problem. Okay. The only thing difference between level 3 and level 4 is that I had to take out a GCF first before I can use my level 3 method. So now that I took out the GCF, I can factor x squared minus 9x plus 10. I'm going to find the factors of C that add to B. Okay, GCF first. Now I'm going to use that when A equals 1 method. So the factors of 20 that add to make negative 9. Factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5, or negative 1 and negative 20, negative 2 and negative 10, and negative 4 and negative 5. The factors that also add to make negative 9 are negative 4 and negative 5. So not forgetting that GCF, never forget your GCF. I'm going to rewrite my GCF, and then I'm going to write out these two pairs as factors. X minus 4, x minus 5 equals 0. Now, if we were just factoring, this would be fine. But now we have to make these factors equal to 0 separately because we're trying to solve. So I get x minus 4 equals 0, and x minus 5 equals 0. Solving for x, I get x equals 5. And I get x equals 4. Okay. Therefore, my zeros are 4 and 5. Okay. Last but not least, level 5, it says determine the solutions to each quadratic function. Okay, I have a quadratic function 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. Here, the a term is not 1. So I'm going to look to see if I can take out a GCF. Clearly, they do not have a GCF. All the three terms have to have a GCF. 2x squared and 2 have a GCF, but 5x does not share the same GCF. Therefore, you cannot take out a GCF from this problem. When you cannot make the a term 1 by either taking out a GCF or it's already 1, you have to use the grouping method. Okay. Which means you have to find the factors of A times C that add to B. Okay. This is when you have to find the factors of A times C that add to make B, when you cannot by any means make that A term 1. So A times C is 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, so I need to find the factors of 4 that add to make 5, which are going to be 1 and 4, 2 and 2, negative 1, negative 4, negative 2, and negative 2. And the factors are 1 and 4. So I'm going to rewrite this middle term, the B term. I'm going to rewrite B as 1x plus 4x. Okay. So I'm going to do 2x squared, okay, plus 4x plus 1x plus 2 equals 0. All I did was I rewrote 5x as 4x plus 1x, which is 5x. Okay. Now, you might have written the 1x here and the 4x here, but I wrote them in a way strategically because it's going to give me the same factor. Now, if you do it the other way, you will notice that you might not get the same factor. in which case you would just go back and flip them the other way. Okay, so now I'm going to group them into groups of 2 terms. So now 2x squared goes with 4x. Those are the 2 terms. And then positive 1x goes with positive 2. Okay. I need to take out the GCF here. And the GCF between 2x squared and positive 4x is going to be 2x. So that 2x goes on the outside. And what's left is x plus 2. For positive 1x plus 2, 1 is going to be our GCF. They only have a 1 in common. They do not have any variables in common. What's left when I divide by 1 is going to be x plus 2. You know you factor correctly when using the grouping method when you have whatever's left in the parentheses is the same. Remember, this is considered one factor. So now I'm going to take my 2 GCFs and I'm going to put them together. So space, I'm going to put them over here. Actually, no, I'll put it right here. 2x plus 1. And then here I'm going to have this factor, x plus 2, is considered one factor. Okay, so if I was factoring 2x plus 1 times x plus 2 equals 0 would be the answer. But now I need to make both of these equal to 0 separately and solve for x. So 2x plus 1 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides. That's going to give me 2x equals negative 1. Divide by 2. X equals negative 1/2. Then I'm going to make x plus 2 equal to 0. Subtract 2 on both sides. You get x equals negative 2. Therefore, my zeros are negative 1/2 and 2. Okay. Now, this grouping method is a lot of steps, I understand. But if you take your time, watch the videos, and practice, do your practice problems, hopefully you'll get to the hang of it. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me via Google Classroom or email. In the future, when we do eventually get into having our class time, face-to-face class time, you will be able to do more practice problems face-to-face and ask as many questions as you would like. Okay? Now, for your practice, you're going to basically do what we just did now. You're just going to have one problem at each level. So level 1 asks you to find the solutions when you're given a graph. Level 2, find the solution when you're given 2 factors. Level 3, find the zeros when you are given a quadratic where the a term is equal to 1. Level 4, find the solutions where you have to take out a GCF first and then use the a equals 1 method. Level 5, you cannot make the a term 1, so you must use the grouping method. We have multiple videos on each of these methods, and we've also done practice multiple times. You can use any of your notes, you can use any of the videos to complete this practice. Okay. I know we're going into spring break, so this activity won't be due until Tuesday, April 14th. And I hope you have a wonderful spring break. Bye.